It's good. Because my background is automatically establish myself. They didn't get access to particular external or maybe orientation. Upset people on that. But no, what do you guys?
Okay, I'm looking at the past and assuming that all the sound and live stream is good, we'll get started. Congratulations everyone for finding your way back. This is quite a maze of a building. I think it's amazing, but literally. Right, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Deborah. I'm the Head of Department of Digital Services at Lincoln University. And I'm talking today about RSS2OAI, which is a bit of code that I've written to harvest our website into Primo. So a bit of background about Lincoln University, where I'm from. It's a small university. Everyone in this conference has been asking me where it is. It's south of Christchurch in New Zealand. So we share a friendly, collaborative / competitive relationship with Canterbury University, which is in Christchurch. We've got about 3,000 students for a total of 2,000 full-time equivalent. And historically, we've been an agricultural college. Now we've expanded to more land-based subjects. So that includes the agriculture, agribusiness, landscape architecture, tourism, sport and recreation. If it's got any relevance to having to be on the ground, then that's a subject that we cover. But we're still very small. The library, which is in this building here, and in fact my office is in here, it merged about 8 years ago with teaching and learning support services. So now we've got 40 people who run teaching support, learning support, careers advice. We've just also gained the disability support team, as well as the traditional library functions and research advice. And within that 40, I've got a team of about 3 people. That's been fluctuating. If anyone wants a job, let me know. And we handle research data management and records management. I've got one person doing those. And then the other few of us cover Primo and Alma, the website, room booking systems, appointment booking systems, various research repositories, research data management repository, and our lecture capture system, and all of the integrations between them. So it's a lot of fun. We don't get to go very much in depth into anything, but we do get our fingers in all the pies. So today, RSS2OAI had a problem. On our website, we've got a site search box to find pages on the website, and we've got a library search box to search Primo. So a student comes along to our website, they want to know how to cite something in APA style for their assignment. It doesn't pop out at them on the website, so they type APA referencing into a search box. Guess which one? The big one, the one right in the middle of the page. And it then takes them to a set of search results which looks like this. There's absolutely no help to them. So what we wanted to do was somehow get the library website indexed in Primo. Luckily, our website is hosted on WordPress, and WordPress has a stunning array of plugins. Okay, let's go here first. So we've previously indexed, when we went live with Primo, we got ex libris to implement OAI feeds from our research at Lincoln. That's our typical research repository, and Living Heritage, which is more of our historical and community collections, and that used the OAI feeds from each of those websites. What we wanted to do was somehow do the same with the LTL website, and the problem is at that time it didn't have an OAI feed because generally websites don't. So we thought, if we could just manage that, so we headed to the WordPress plugin store and typed in OAI BMH, and it didn't bring back anything. I tried OAI, it brought back OAI ORE, and I'm going, I don't think that's the same thing. And also, hardly anyone was using it, and it had been created about 5 years ago, and I couldn't really trust that it was really being actively maintained. So that wasn't really a go. But then I thought, one thing that WordPress website does have is an RSS feed. Maybe we can do something with that. I mean, RSS is XML, and OAI is XML, so, how hard could it be? So the main glitch here was that the RSS feed on WordPress typically includes the posts, blog style. And that's fine for a blog, but we were mostly using the static pages, which don't get included in the RSS feed. So we looked through the plugin store again and found the RSS includes pages plugin, which does what it says on the tin. It just changes the selection criteria for the RSS feeds, so it includes both posts and the plugins. So now our RSS feed included every page on our website, and it's updated on an hourly basis, which is fantastic. We don't actually need it that often. But the next step was just to convert it, very easily I'm sure, into an OAI feed, which we then import into Primo using a pipe. So that meant converting RSS metadata attributes into OAI, the channel information into a request information, and RSS items into OAI records. Titles, publication dates, creator, permalink description, all of that. One handy thing about being an RSS feed is that as well as having a description, which is just a bit of a blurb, which we could use as an abstract, it also pulls the full text of the web page into a content field, and we can then use that for full text indexing in Primo. So here's the overview of how we did this. First we set up the Primo data source using our PHP code as the base URL. When the pipe runs, it goes there using standard OAI syntax to ask for a list of records in OAI DC format, starting from the date that the pipe last ran. The code then fetches the RSS feed from our website and does a bit of magic to convert it back into OAI to send it to Primo to harvest and show beautiful results. So here's an overview of the main cases that our PHP code covers and the main functions it uses. So we've got 3 verbs, which are standard OAI requests. Typically, OAI is meant to include another 3 verbs, but I asked Ex Libris, do you actually use all of these? And they said, no, we only use these ones. So I only created those ones. But other than being lazy, I just relied on the official Open Archives Initiative Protocol for Metadata Harvesting specification, version 2.0. So the next set of slides is just going to go into each of these steps in a bit more detail, starting with the parameters. This is the really basic stuff that the code needs. Firstly, where does it find the RSS feeds to start with? The admin email gets included on the OAI's identify request results. The copyright statements there are because we use Creative Commons, we have a lot of open access material, and we want to highlight that open access material in library search in Primo. So we've coded all of every time we create a database and import that, a repository and have that harvested in Primo, we make sure that the right statement gets it harvested using the open access facets. Serve SSL is true because we're serving this over HTTPS and that just changes the URLs. use build date equals true needs a bit more explanation. Primo scheduled pipes usually harvest from only the OAI entries modified since the pipe was last run. So in this case, I've cunningly calculated yesterday morning. But there are two kinds of dates on the WordPress RSS feed. One is for each item's creation date, so in yellow on the right. So no matter how recently or how often an item or a web page has been edited, the item information in the RSS feed always uses the creation date. So with use build date equals false, the default, only the middle item here would be harvested, because it's the only one that's been created after the last harvest date. So that's usually fine for a blog post, because you write a blog post, you put it up, you don't touch it again. But for our site, we've got these static pages. Every now and then we go in and change it. Sometimes it's a small tweak, sometimes we are rewriting the entire page, and we want that most recent text to be harvested in Primo. So the second kind of date in WordPress in their RSS feed is the build date. So that's the date the RSS feed itself was last built, and it's calculated based on when the most recently modified, when any page was most recently modified. So using that, as long as at least one page was modified since yesterday morning, every page gets included in the OAI feed. And then Primo harvests all of those pages, just overwrites the previous data that it had, and that's exactly what we wanted. So I've left it configurable in the code, but for us that's what we wanted there. The only thing that doesn't get picked up in either case is any items that have been deleted. So when we delete a page, we need to go and manually run a delete and reload pipe to remove it from Primo, and I probably should run one of those actually. The identify page just needs a bit of basic information. Some of it comes from the basic parameters, some of it comes from the RSS feed, so I've got a function here that fetches the RSS. It's coded to deal with resumption because we'll need that a bit later on. Other than that, it's a very simple curl get request. We do HTTP decoding and then we load it as an array out of the XML. The only tidying I've done is to trim out the white space and also convert any ampersands. The comment there, XML hates the ampersand with a burning passion. I just struggled, I had so many errors and they were so bewildering until I finally figured out it was the ampersand all along. So the main request is the list records one. That's where that's where Primo actually gets the information for all of the records that it's harvesting in. So there's a lot of if-else logic here to handle different cases, but so if we're using the build date and the RSS feed hasn't changed since we last harvested it, it just creates an empty feed. But otherwise, it fetches the RSS, loops through and fetches page after page after page until it's got it all, and imports all of those items. Further down off screen, if we're using the item creation date instead, if it is a blog, for example, then we still need to loop through again because the items aren't in order, but as we loop through, we just discard any items that were created before the last harvest date. And then once we've got that list of items, we go through and build an array full of the data that we'll need in our OAI feed. There's the basic schema information up at the top. Then we've got request parameters. And then for each item, the type is always text. The identifier is derived from the WordPress permalink. The date is converted from one format into another. Luckily, PHP has a lot of good functions for that. And then ampersands get replaced with the word and again. I tried just escaping it, but when you escape it, it makes it an ampersand, amp, colon, semicolon, and that still threw up problems. So finally I just gave up and said, no, we're replacing the ampersand with the actual word. And I think I've also just banned everyone from creating titles with an ampersand in them. The final thing is once we've got this array full of OAI data, we send it to the associated array to XML formula function, starts with it. And I'm not going to talk about that function very much because I had a look at it. I'm going, that doesn't look quite like my coding style. It looks a bit too elegant for that. So I'm pretty sure I just stole it from Stack Exchange. But what it does, it turns an array into XML. It's beautiful. And we then just echo that to output, so we just print it. And now, Primo harvests it, and there we go. A student types in APA referencing, and they get a couple of pages from our website right up the top in the results. We've shown them, so when we did all the PNX pipe stuff in Primo, we set it up to harvest as type website. We put in a custom thumbnail, so it's very visible as the Lincoln brand. We've included them in the open access facet and Lincoln Uni created, so all of our own content we've put a custom facet in there so people can, under the top ones there, so people can actually click there and just get results from Lincoln University repositories and websites. An additional thing we did was to boost the results from this data source to make sure they show up higher than other results, because chances are if we've got a website on it, it's probably actually a lot more relevant than anything else on there. So we've got our institutional repositories feeding into Primo. Now we've got our LTL website feeding in. We've also, last year we added journals at Lincoln, which is our open journal system, which hosts a couple of Lincoln journals. We're hoping to add a couple more journals to those, and then they'll automatically also be included. And just this July we launched Fitchett for our research data sets. So data at Lincoln is also harvested into Primo. So we've got quite a lot of really good content there. There's just one, at the moment, one more piece of the puzzle, which is Panopto. We launched Panopto this year as well. It hosts it records, hosts and streams our lecture recordings and other videos for teaching. We've got a small but growing collection there, and we want ultimately to harvest those into Primo as well, take over the world with Primo. Recently, Panopto has created a RESTful API. So it should theoretically be possible to create an API to OAI code and do exactly the same thing as RSS to OAI does. I had really hoped to have a demo ready in time for ANZREG. Unfortunately, I'm not the most expert coder, and Panopto are really terrible at documenting. So I'm still working with their support staff to actually get the information I need to make the API calls to do this. But when it is ready, I'll share the code on GitHub and post to the mailing list. That's going to be pretty exciting. In the meantime, the code for RSS to OAI is up on GitHub and available for anyone who's interested in using it or modifying it or telling me how I can do it better. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
How many records are in the library hubs?
From the library website?
Yes, yeah.
I think it's a couple of hundred. I haven't actually checked the numbers, but a while back we had about 400 pages on the website, and then we redid the entire website and got rid of half of them. So yeah. I think it's around about that.
Would it be, process that way, but would it be worth just deleting and reloading every single time? Maybe they have to like have a schedule all the time.
I would love to schedule the delete and reload pipe.
Yeah.
The problem is that Primo has it has that when the pipe was last run, and every time it reloads, every time the pipe runs, it updates that last ran date.
Yeah.
So then if you scheduled the delete and reload pipe, it would delete everything, but then it would only load pages that were new since you last ran the pipe.
If you use your configuration where build date is
It
whatever.
still would do that because it's relying on the from. There.
Yeah.
So
But you could tell your PHP to not.
I could tell my PHP to ignore that. So yeah, that would be a way to I think I was following the II specification a bit, maybe too closely for our purposes.
Yeah. No, that's good. Right.
I'm curious if you have any stats or even anecdotal evidence on the impact that actually harvesting the website into Primo has had. I ask because we actually manually add a few of the website pages, such as a note to the resource recommendation, and that's a manual process. Adding things line by line. So we haven't done it for the whole website. So I'm just curious if there's any kind of evidence that says, yes, your website is used, or yes, you had users name that they've not been able to find it yet.
I have no evidence, or I've gone looking for no evidence. And it's largely a function of we've got so many things to do, not enough time. So we tend to do something and then go, right, we've done it, what's next? But yeah, it would be really interesting for us to actually go into our Google Analytics, even just to see are people coming from Primo. Yeah, should do that.
I noticed in code, this example, there was a GUI creating an identifier with a new globally unique ID.
Yes.
Next one.
Yeah, down there. Yeah.
Why would, well,
Oh, so it's pulling the UID. Okay, let's go back to the XML. Come on, this is probably transitions. Yeah, so so it's basically the XML has item UID. So we're using that, and then we're just sort of.
so you're creating one. That's
Yeah. I think it might be that I was replacing the page ID with just a P or something. And I'm sure I had a reason for that at the time.
You think about XSL as an alternate to making an array from the old XML and creating.
Yeah, I thought about XSL and then I was going, but I don't know. See, I've used XSL in, for example, DSpace and elements and that, but obviously there's something built into DSpace that actually does the transformation. So I could write an XSL thing, but I wouldn't know how to actually call it.
Yeah.
So it was easier to just write this from scratch than use.
I mean, as a newbie to a lot of the system stuff, I mean, I've not done a lot of work with WordPress before. I think this is a really, really innovative use of some of those inbuilt functions to see how you can pull something that wouldn't normally natively work with, with Primo. I just think that's awesome. You know, the fact that, Moore's kind of works around to it as well. So, yeah, that's really, really cool.
Well, it's fun and it's handy because, as you say, there's probably better ways to do some parts of it. But it's and that's why I actually like coming along to these days and finding out what have I missed. Because I tend to, I come to a problem and I go, okay, I've got a hammer. I'm going to bang that nail or that screw or whatever it is until it works. Yeah.
One more comment. So
Yes, please.
doesn't Primo let you RSS partners?
I know Primo does have some kind of transformation thing in there.
Yeah.
And it's just that I didn't explore it simply because I haven't used it in the past, so I thought it might actually be quite good to just do it the way I know rather than. So yeah, I think there's a whole lot of different ways you can approach this, and I think there's, it's that's one of the great things about Primo is that it does actually let you do cool things if you just figure out how. Cool, thank you. I should be watching the time better. 11:40. So we've got 5 more minutes. So either questions or chat among yourselves while we set up for our next presentation.
So when we go to
Put a big order. Oh, that's in ours.
okay to come up, yes. So what happens when we leave, so this is from the agency. So if you've got a resource on your ANZREG database, could anybody write that? Shut my
if you're open up your database pages to make sure you're not
I've gone for
You can search,
each one.
you can search it.
and then I'm ready to go quite well. An hour, it's not that much time. Nothing
Yeah, I remember reading something about.
It's a configuration thing that say show return on search results regardless of
So they can break down subject matter.
Yes, so you mean the website search? Yeah. Occasionally someone
At this stage, it's still like
yes,
So I'm more inclined to as well as
because we're the system owner and we're also
it's like driving.
they're the system owner, we're the
I live
business.
at the mountain. I haven't been and
As it should be, because we know. Yeah. Exactly. Lots of us involvement in the implementation phase. That was we've already had this, so but to actually
so our next speaker is Euwe, who is also going to be speaking on behalf of Peter, Brotherton. And they're going to be talking, Euwe will be talking to us about using APIs to enhance the user experience. So Euwe is the manager of digital library systems and services at the State Library of New South Wales. And I'll try not to go into your talk too much. So welcome, thank you for talking to us.
Yeah, so Peter is an apology today. I'll do my best to represent his slides. First, before I jump in, how many are actually developers in this room? Please show of hands. Or classify yourselves as scripting?
Scripting.
Leave the hands up.
Just might write the headline, but not the script.
I'll give myself an ish.
So there's about 6 developers-ish, and we have librarians in this room, which is probably the majority. Anyone in the sort of the strategy architecture space?
Yes, that's strategy.
And strategy. All right. Thank you. I guess it was always hard for me to be able to present something like this because it's got, there is a big technical side of things, but this has got a slight difference to what we presented at Euwe, because Euwe was really about more about the technical side. I think it's important that we try to always align technology with business, and that's what I'll be talking about today. Is that we don't just like the shiny things, but how does having an application strategy actually enable you to transform it and have better service delivery. So before I do, we've got 4 systems that we really aggressively tried to implement in 2015. I think Katrina talked yesterday about the quickest ALMA implementation. We tried to implement Rosetta AdLib, ALMA. You got a funny look in your face. Sorry?
Live in 2016 with ALMA.
Oh, the other way. But we were really looking at a 1-year implementation for all 4 systems. And realistically, that wasn't going to happen. So in terms of transitioning, we went live with, was the other way around? Primo, in 2016, and Rosetta and AdLib after that. So the main things here is trying to make sure that you have data that you can migrate out of the systems. We had a lot of bespoke implementations for our archival collection management system as well as our digital asset management system. So we still have a bit of data quality that we're trying to address in these new systems. This is our current state. We've got Primo, which I'm sure a lot of you have. We use ALMA as our published physical and electronic collection management system. And we also use ADLib for our archival systems. And sitting below all that, in terms of digitized assets and our born digital assets, we have Rosetta as our digital preservation system as well. So that's the current state. Over the last 3 years, or 4 years, we've been trying to customize the interfaces to fit our users' needs, and actually just to even get us close to a parity of what we used to have. So there wasn't a lot of bells and whistles yet. We wanted to try to just have very similar functionality to what we used to have. So Primo UI, we actually launched with the new Primo UI. We didn't have the classic UI. There's a white branding configuration against our corporate style guides. We added thumbnails, which was great. And over the last couple of years, we've looked at normalizing, especially trying to normalize data that from archival as well as published collections. It makes that quite difficult. This is AdLib. This is our user interface for AdLib. We again customize this for the corporate branding. And AdLib also has integration with Rosetta. So what you're seeing here is thumbnails, and these thumbnails point back to our Rosetta digital asset management system. One thing that AdLib does have is hierarchies. If you've worked with cultural collections and archival collections, Primo doesn't do hierarchies very well. There are some institutions that are able to use facets, use a bit of signage around their collections in Primo, but AdLib UI's strength was really being able to show users how to use the collection in a context as well. Now the difficulty with AdLib was it's a different technology stack to support. This is a .NET stack, and we had developers that had more open source PHP. So but in terms of a user interface, we had to bring in some skills to develop against this. And finally, Rosetta. So across all 4 systems, this is the last interface that we have to customize. We use Rosetta's external viewer. And for this, there's integration points, API integration points across the different catalogs. So if it's published collection, all this metadata is pulled in from APIs from Alma, or if it's unpublished or archival, this is pulled in from Admin. So in doing all this, we still had a lot of feedback from our leaders and our users because there was quite a fractured user experience. You'll have different ways that users can come into the local website and look at our collections, but essentially if you jump to the local website, you've got these different catalogs. We try to make the look and feel the same, but what we found, especially in terms of feedback, is users would get lost. So they would end up sort of down this sort of rabbit hole. They didn't know how to get their way back. And we tried to make sure that there's a bit of wayfinding around the systems. So the challenges over the last 3 years, I guess, is I mentioned the fractured journey across the catalogs, hierarchies. We were really trying to push hierarchies in Primo. And we worked even with sort of the likes of the National Library of Israel, the Getty, and sort of the larger organisations that have archival collections in Primo. Findability, we are a partner with Xlibris. If you're on the new Primo UI and you want to get that into Google, it still doesn't work. So we are working with Xlibris to get all of our records from Primo UI, because we went live with Primo UI and we lost a lot of our index records. So now we've got pretty much, I think there's about 50,000 records out of potentially 4 million records that should be indexed. So again, this is a thing that we're working on in terms of findability. Customizations, we didn't want to over-customize. We wanted to do things based on user needs. But a lot of these interfaces, they were either limited or restricted. System performance, large collections, large digital assets, a lot of times you get timeouts, or sometimes the systems would crash. And downtime. What we found was it was always a struggle to schedule downtime and upgrades and updates. So these are some of the challenges we wanted to address moving forward. So we could have either done nothing, manage expectations, tell users we can provide a bit more guidance on the local websites. The second thing is we can continue configuring the out-of-box interfaces, but we were really at the point of diminishing returns there. And we didn't want to over-customize again. And the third is, if you've heard of headless approach, we really want to use the systems of record for their strengths, which is really providing that management, but not necessarily the user experience. So we wanted to invest in the user experience. So the first thing we did was look at what is best practice in terms of application portfolios. If you've got a large suite of applications, how do you manage these in a sustainable way? If you've heard of the application portfolio management strategy from Gartner, they really categorize things into 3 main areas. You've got your systems of record, and they're typically systems that are highly commoditized, or the industry knows and they've answered the question. So you really want, like your SAP, your ERP systems, your library management systems, they're all pretty much the same. And you want to use at least 80% of the functionality from these systems, because that's where you're heavily investing a lot of your money. The systems of differentiation is what separates you from other universities, other libraries. And that's where you want to be able to look at maybe not changing the data too much. The system of record should have the data, and ideally these are the systems that pull the data, and I'll share what that looks like. And innovation, we're in the innovation age right now. It's about experimenting, prototyping quickly, and the systems of innovation is where you want to do something quite quickly, a proof of concept, a pilot, And that's where we're sort of heading towards right now, is that system innovation space. So for us, Axiom, our archival collection management system, Rosetta, and AMA, they're our source of truth systems for digitized and born digital, as well as our published and unpublished records. In terms of the middle layer, Primo, we feel is that differentiation. Even though we might all have the same system, that does, as you can see, the different customizations we've done for Primo. Our State Library website, and we have different platforms as well, which pull from these catalogs. And at the high level, the systems of innovation, this is where we're developing all of our new user interfaces. We're doing this in a very agile approach, and we're doing testing early. But the important thing is none of this will work if you don't have a good service layer in the middle. I think previously we were talking about not allowing patrons or whoever to get access to your API keys. It's a shame because there's so much data that's available in those systems. How do you abstract that so there's less risk, but you do provide a mechanism for people to download your data using machines or even integrate. So the service layer is a big part of our strategy as well. I talked about agile. So what you potentially want to do is obviously people move towards agile approach, but PMF, the traditional waterfall, the old project management methodology, it's still sound, and it's especially sound in the systems of record because you don't want to run agile or high-risk projects in those systems. I think actually our implementation was done with an agile approach, but it's important that you don't just try to run agile across all projects. They are fit for purpose. And sorry for this slide, but I'm not sure if you can read it. The important thing is, the reason why it's called pace layering is each one of the different levels run at different paces. So the systems of record you typically wouldn't change, like ALMA, etc. You wouldn't change. 10 years is probably the lifespan for this, and that's more about running the business. That's your operational efficiency. This is where the money is heavily invested in these systems of record. The differentiation typically might be 2 to 5 years. They might have those, and this is really focused on it's growing the business. Okay, so this is really where you want to push in terms of strategy, innovation, and then finally the last is about 3 to 12 months lifespan, and this is the disruptive thinking. This is where you want to transform the business as well. So I think it's a nice way to categorize your systems and applications, and also say where are the more high-risk areas. So for us to go down this strategy, we really looked at kind of a microservices or macro services approach, if you've heard that being thrown around. The way that applications used to be developed, when they were sort of a client-server architecture on a sort of bare metal or hardware, they're very monolithic. You can buy them, they're turnkey, do a bit of customization, and they work. But now with the cloud and platforms, it's important to try to see how can we continue to do these release and updates without affecting the end user. And places like Google, Facebook, etc., you don't actually realize, but they're running thousands of updates per day without affecting the user experience or availability. So this is the current state, and Rosetta fits under this, ANZREG. But what we're trying to do now is really have a bit of a transition between the monolithic applications to the decoupled. So we're definitely not replacing these systems of record. They've got their strengths, but what we're looking at is applying this sort of web service layer so that we can develop these user interfaces. And like I mentioned earlier, we've got a team that have a technology stack that they support, and that's the good thing about this level here is it's very agnostic. You can choose what stack is best for the organization. So this is I had to put this up because it's our architecture, but don't be too concerned about all the lines. Essentially, these are our source systems, sitting on the right. Over here is a user app. So when we start talking about headless approach, this is where all the sort of the magic happens in the front end. If you're familiar with front end technology, we use React Node.js, and it's back end and front end as well. In the system apps side of things, this is where a lot of the APIs happen. We use Apigee, which is our API mediation layer. I'll talk a bit about Apigee later on. And then the important thing is your user apps or whatever you create on the front end don't interact directly with the source systems. So you can imagine if you get a whole lot of traffic and Hammer may go down because of all the requests, you might get a lot of traffic, and we do right now for Rosetta and PhotoWare. Being able to have something sort of within this type of architecture where you've got caching, it's performant, you can scale it as well. So based on the need, you can add more servers if you need to. So this is what this area looks like over here. And to do that, we're using S3 in Amazon, SQS, which is a queuing service, and Postgres with Elasticsearch as well. And for all this to work, obviously we need APIs coming out of the source systems. This is an example of a GET record. So essentially, if a client wants to view a record from either Alma or ANZREG, the backend app does a request, does a response essentially, and pulls the data from the data services, and then sends it to the front end and comes back to the client browser. Now, with any front end technology, you have to make sure, especially if it's Java or JavaScript, you have to make sure that you have a page that Google can actually index. So we created a static page for Google to be able to crawl the pages, and that'll also have user-friendly links up on persistent URLs. And caching also happens here too. So the advantage is these source systems, as you can see, they're not connected. If they do fall over, and we do cache a lot, we can still have client requests fulfilled as well. In terms of real-time availability and Alma, for instance, that won't work, but pages that are largely static and records that are largely static, they'll be up as well. And also with this type of architecture, if you do have to do an update in one of these source systems, especially a production update, it shouldn't affect the front-end user experience. And for those that are interested, I won't go into too much detail here, but for us to be able to do all this data caching and ingestion, we've got a daily job which runs against Lambda. If you're familiar with Lambda's in Amazon Web Services, it's a way that you can create functions as a service. You don't have to worry about maintaining servers. It's called serverless. So we use Lambda. We push data back and forth. We do some normalization between these data services, and we have offline feeds from the source systems as well. Now the advantage in having everything here as well is that because we have published, unpublished collections, we've got on the website, we have related information, we've created an ontology or a data model here in the middle, which is still being built out, but it actually means that when we create a page about a record, we'll have more information, more related information about it. It won't look like two distinct bits of information, but this is still a work in progress as well. So this is the data ingestion. It runs quite regularly. If we need to ingest quickly, we just have to spin up or create more sort of servers within this. Then once that need is gone, we can pull the services back. So I talked about the power of the API management, and because we're talking about interoperability, we're talking about development, there's a big push now to have an API management layer. There's a lot of open source API layers that you can get. I know that Nish was using one, I think Ben, you mentioned yesterday,
Azure Gateway.
Azure Gateway. We're using Apogee out of Google. But the advantages are here, for instance, this is like typical response time. So when someone would send a web page request, it used to be about 816 milliseconds from either Alma or Primo, depends which part of the region you're in. But now with having API indication, it's 4.5 seconds, which is 180 times quicker. Advantages of using something like Apogee is typically API responses are stored forever, so that means if someone's requested a record, that record should always be available in the cache. You don't always go to the source systems for the same record as well, which takes the load off these systems. And also, if you're with Ex Libris and you have a threshold for APIs, you're not constantly hitting the, I don't know if anyone actually hits that limit, but we've hit it a few times and what's fallen over there? We had everything's fallen over. But Ex Libris have been very nice to clear our threshold for the day quite quickly. I mentioned responses are 100 times faster. Back-end systems, they do what they need to do. They can do the grunt work, and they don't have to worry about the user experience. And when there are updates or new records, they're refreshed occasionally. So the good thing about that API mediation is architecture can be extended to other systems, so you can start onboarding different applications. Typically, you want to be able to have that API layer that sits over the top of Alma, Primo, and you can just do a straight pass-through. And for your users, if you're into open data and you want to release big data sets, you're better off using an API mediation layer, because that means if you do end up swapping out your library management system, for instance, that API should still pretty much be the same. Services can be made available, as I've mentioned. So if you've got an API page, if you want people to access your data in an easy way, you can you can document all of that. Here we've got API products can be grouped together. So, for instance, with Alma, if it makes sense, if you want to combine the div, the acquisitions, depending on what type of API, you can create these whole sort of categories and then provide access to this specific API. Rather than giving someone an API key and say, go for it, you can customize the API experience for users. Analytics is a big one. I mean, we're in the age of data right now, and if data is the, I guess the asset for a lot of organizations, analytics are an important thing. So you can track how many people are actually using your APIs, but also the traffic back and forth. And also real time. So if a system does go down, or there is a slow response, you can pick that up in real time as well. But the goals here aren't to create this this kind of ecosystem. It's really about that unified customer experience. That's what the strategic driver is for us. Now with this document, this is another way, but this is what we're looking at in the future is having this API layer in the middle. All of our systems of record having a kind of service layer that sits over the top of them. We want to get rid of point-to-point API integration, because point-to-point can break quite easily, and if something gets upgraded, for instance, if you're integrating with a student management system and they change the way that they do things, you'll have to cater for that. So with a service approach to APIs, you can ensure that you've got a schema for your API, which you can extend to whatever third party to ensure that none of the integration breaks. But what this means for the end user is that you've got these fit-for-purpose apps. You can have mobile experiences, desktop experiences. You can hook into Siri, for instance. So there's all these different experiences. And the point here is it's not a single API, it's multiple APIs. So if you are upgrading, for instance, something down here, but it doesn't affect this specific API, that means you have better availability for whoever is using a front end against this API. I'll speak to it. I think that's it. So this is our roadmap. We've already done an internal release to staff about the whole sort of user experience, as well as we've implemented the infrastructure, and we're looking at pushing out the our MVP to the public and this year, early next year. We'll see how things go. So takeaways are, I think it's important to implement an application strategy. It doesn't have to be massive, but if you are able to categorize your applications into these different facets, I think it makes it easier for you to identify where your riskier projects are, and you can really push innovation. And use the systems for their strengths. Like, we acknowledge the fact that Rosetta is a strong digital preservation system, but it's not necessarily the best in terms of a user experience. So we want to be able to use Rosetta. And look, we work with Ex Libris as well. We work closely with them about, in version 6 of Rosetta, how their new viewers work. And I think it's important that we have that community approach. But we do acknowledge the fact that it's a strong digital preservation system, so we want to be able to use it for that. Don't over-customize or configure those systems at the bottom, because that creates technical debt. And as we know, you have to do an update, an upgrade, you have to remember what you did. So where you can, use the out-of-the-box functionality with some customization. I talked about the macro services. If you want to go down that path, I'm happy to go into more detail about the way we've done that. API mediation, just play around. I think there's so many tools out there, and they're free, to provide that API layer. And the amount of performance and availability and analytics you can get out of that, I think it will benefit the users in the end. And lastly, it's about focusing and aligning what you're doing with the business strategy. So user experience has been our business strategy, and these are the underpinnings and the foundations from a technical perspective, but using best practice as well. That's all. I've got questions of everyone here, if not other questions.
Sorry, I'm not techie, I'm not there yet. But my understanding is that the media, can you give us an example of, for example, about requests and when the core system fails? Yes. And then you mentioned about having the advantage of having a mediated API, so that then you constantly caching it. Yes. And what's when obviously when the core system fails, so I was, can you explain a bit more that it was saving, will the servers be, because of the existence of mediated API, so you can do a lot of things behind the scenes without impacting user experience? Yes. What are the examples of experiences that won't be impact when the updates, I mean, tangibly, if you think of an example that we can illustrate the situation. Sorry, because
so maybe, so for instance, if Alma goes down, and I think this is what you're asking, if Alma goes down and you've cached those records, and the front end uses that cache, the users won't feel it. So in terms of availability, upgrades and updates, the users won't feel any downtime. I think that's
yeah. So how? So does that mean that it's no longer how long? I mean, it doesn't go down that often, but hopefully not. But say 30 minutes.
Yeah.
How would so you're able to pick up the downtime and cache that.
Yeah. Like typically we get a phone call. But I guess the user interface never interacts with Alma. Right? It always goes via this middle layer.
That's the, yeah, thank you.
But things such as requests, availability, obviously where you need the real time, that doesn't work in that scenario.
Or could you queued up the request and waited for Alma
Offline.
You could, so with SQS and
Yeah.
queuing down there, definitely you can, or offline circuit.
do you API the, like, let's say the view records or whatever into this middle layer?
Yeah.
Or do you like do a nightly dump to make it more cost effective on using APIs, like schedule a set, like just dump XML onto FTP server and then use that as a source in a caching like environment, or you just API calls to get data going flowing between?
Yeah, typically we'd only do an API call to these source systems to get new records, or to get updates, or deletions to those records. Because RPG is, which is our API layer, it's got a number of transactions based on what we're subscribed to. We try not to do too much back and forth, but really the threshold there is Alma, and sorry, the Xlibris APIs. You don't want to hammer those APIs.
Thank you very much. I think we're now at lunchtime, so yep.
I'll ask questions later on.
Yeah, please, I'm going to have to catch up with you. And we're back here at 1:15. I'll just check if I have any more notes. But that might be no. No, it's lunchtime. Enjoy lunch.
Is lunch in the same place?
No, it's just unfortunately.